As the first light of dawn spills across the jagged horizon, a handful of humans steps quietly from the shadowed mouth of a limestone cave. Their day is already in motion. Some pause to scan the distant terrain for signs of movement, perhaps the flick of an antelope's ear or the glint of fur among the trees. Others stoop low, gathering brittle branches and dry moss to stoke the embers of a fire that has smoldered through the night. This fire is no mere comfort, it is the heartbeat of their shelter, the guardian against cold and predators, and the crucible of cooked meals. But what truly filled the long waking hours of our Paleolithic ancestors? The cartoonish image of shaggy cavemen dragging women by the hair or blindly clubbing mammoths couldn't be further from the nuanced reality. These early humans led intricate lives woven from adaptation, knowledge, and cooperation in a world where survival itself was a full-time vocation. When we talk about cavemen, we're referring to people who lived throughout the vast span of the Paleolithic era, stretching back some 2.6 million years and ending only 12,000 years ago. This immense stretch of time, encompassing over 99% of our species' existence, unfolded long before the first crops were planted, before cities rose, or symbols were carved into stone tablets. Yet it was far from a stagnant age. Across the millennia, human beings made extraordinary leaps in technology, social bonds, and even artistic expression. What we now know of their lives is drawn from many threads, stone tools left behind near long-cooled hearths, remnants of meals, and even fragile traces like worn baskets or bone needles. Cave paintings speak in vivid color of their symbolic world, while modern-day studies of hunter-gatherers offer cautious but valuable insight into their ways of living. Importantly, there was no single Paleolithic experience. Life differed widely by location, climate, and time. A Homo habilis roaming East Africa 2 million years ago lived a vastly different life from a Cro-Magnon artist painting in the deep caves of France 20,000 years ago. Climate played an outsized role. During the Ice Ages, with ice sheets smothering much of Europe and Asia, humans developed strategies vastly different from those in tropical forests or grassy plains. Coastal groups became adept at fishing, inland peoples tracked herds or foraged for roots and berries. Despite these differences, what all Paleolithic people shared was a mode of living. They hunted wild animals, gathered edible plants, and relied entirely on their wits and tools to survive. Their days unfolded with the rhythm of nature. As the sun crept higher, the fire from the night before was gently stirred back to life. Starting one anew from scratch was too difficult and time-consuming, so embers were kept alive, wrapped in moss or slow-burning material through the night. Once light bathed the land, the day's tasks began. Fishing was another vital skill. At the Coast Air site in Illinois, dating to about 9,000 years ago, people used bone hooks and likely nets. The season shaped their diet. Spring brought eggs and fresh greens, summer offered berries and young prey, autumn focused on nut gathering and preparing for the winter. Winter required storage dried meat, cached roots, or frozen game. Underground pits or cold streams served as nature's refrigerators. Though storage techniques were basic, they were vital. Nutritionally, Paleolithic people often fared better than early farmers. Bone studies suggest they had varied diets with fewer deficiencies. A key leap was cooking. Evidence shows it may date back at least 400,000 years. Cooking not only softened food, making it easier to digest, but also neutralized toxins and unlocked more energy from plants and meats. Tool making was a daily activity, not an occasional chore. Stone tools dulled quickly and had to be reshaped constantly. While a simple flake could be made quickly, many tools took hours of skillful crafting. Over time, techniques became more refined, from the chunky Oldowan tools of early humans to the symmetrical Acheulean hand axes, to the Middle Paleolithic's Levallois technique, which allowed greater precision. By the Upper Paleolithic, specialized tools exploded in variety: scrapers, awls, burins, blades, all designed for specific purposes. Stone was just one medium. Wood, though rarely preserved, was used widely, evident from shaped spears and digging sticks. Antler, bone, and ivory offered strength and flexibility turned into harpoons, needles, fish hooks, and even art. Containers evolved from natural items like shells and gourds to woven baskets and sewn leather pouches. By 20,000 years ago in China, the first signs of pottery emerged. Clothing followed climate. Cold demanded warm hides, scraped clean and sewn with bone needles. Despite the caveman stereotype, caves were only used where available. They were often seasonal homes or shelters from storms. Most lived in tents or huts, like the oval wooden dwellings found at Terra Meda or the mammoth bone homes of Ukraine. Spaces organized around a central hearth with areas for sleeping, tool-making, and food prep. These homes were cared for. Fires were tended. Structures were repaired. Living areas were kept clean, and refuse was tossed in designated dumps. Children grew up surrounded by work and play, not separated by age or schooling, but learning by watching and doing. Hygiene may be hard to trace, but dental cleaning with fibrous plants and bathing in rivers were likely routine. Care for the sick or injured was part of community life. Skeletons show healed fractures and signs of long-term survival with disabilities, revealing a culture of care. Social life was anything but primitive. Small bands of 20 to 30 people formed the core unit, but contact with other groups was common. Exotic materials like obsidian or marine shells, found far from their sources, suggest trade routes spanning hundreds of miles. Food sharing created social bonds, mutual obligations, and likely feasts. Large hearths at sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic point to communal meals. Art flourished. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, ochre processing 100,000 years ago suggests early symbolic behavior. By the Upper Paleolithic, we see detailed cave paintings, carved figurines, and even musical instruments. Bone flutes from Germany, over 40,000 years old, produce recognizable scales. Drums made from hide or hollow logs may have added rhythm. Music, ritual, and storytelling likely infused their evenings with emotion, memory, and meaning. Evidence suggests healing knowledge to medicinal plant residues and ancient teeth, perhaps even early forms of shamanism reflected in the half-human, half-animal figures painted deep within caves. Violence existed, but wasn't a daily reality. While some skeletons show wounds from conflict, such injuries were rare. In many places, low population density and relative abundance of resources limited conflict. In truth, the Paleolithic way of life was the most enduring and adaptive human strategy ever devised. It weathered ice ages, droughts, and migrations across continents. These people managed ecosystems through fire, hunting choices, and foraging strategies. Evidence from Australia shows Aboriginal fire management 65,000 years ago, creating rich, biodiverse landscapes. They had to know their world intimately: plants, animals, stones, weather, social cues, and more. Their tools, though seemingly simple, were the result of thousands of years of refinement. Their way of life demanded generalists who were artists, engineers, caregivers, hunters, and teachers all at once. And they gave us something even more profound: the birth of culture. Through abstract art, symbolic behavior, and complex cooperation, they laid the foundation for everything that followed. So, what did cavemen really do all day? They rose with the sun to tend their fires and gather food. They built tools with patient mastery. They hunted with strategy and risk. They raised children, told stories, made music, and formed bonds that would carry their communities forward. They were environmental stewards, innovators, and artists in their own right. Not brutish or backward, but creative, resilient, and profoundly human. When you imagine a Paleolithic person, don't picture a caricature. See a skilled toolmaker, a botanist with a keen eye, an expressive artist, and a loyal community member, all wrapped into one agile, adaptable soul.